What's up, Wizards? It's Dev, and we got some pretty light work today, I gotta admit. There's about 15 cards that we want to look at from Final Fantasy today. Brand new stuff, but a lot of it is from the intro packs, so they're all technically rare, but they're not the best cards in the world. That said, I like to look at every card that's legal and standard, and even some that aren't sometimes. Kind of form some opinions, especially when it's the Final Fantasy set, and there's going to be a lot of super hype characters I want to talk about. So for what it's worth, we're going to go through the cards today, and I do think there's some good stuff in there. I think there's 2 or 3 really, really decent cards, but we got to start somewhere. So today it's going to be Theater Ship Prima Vista, 5 mana, 4 and a blue for a 5/3 uncommon legendary vehicle with flying. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, if 4 or more mana were spent to cast it, this vehicle becomes an artifact creature until end of turn, or you can just crew it for 2. So a 5 mana 5/3 flyer is just not amazing. Honestly, even if you get to crew it by just casting a spell, it's still not that good. So just in terms of rate, I'm not super super Next is Namazu Trader. This is actually a common, whereas the first card we looked at was a uncommon, but I actually think this is slightly stronger. 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 3/4 fish citizen. I'm in love already. When this creature enters, you lose 1 life and create a treasure token. When this creature attacks, you may sacrifice another creature or artifact. If you do, surveil 2. So you get kind of a nice little sack outlet when you do want it, but you have to attack with it. You know what I mean? Surveil 2 isn't the best upside in the world. My favorite thing about this is just the enters trigger. Grab a treasure token when it ETBs. Not a whole lot of black creatures that actually do that. There are a few, right? But not a ton, so kind of like that about it. But again, not super duper impressed, but just about any ETB create a treasure token is kind of noteworthy, and most creatures that do that are in red or green. So, black gets one, cool. There's a few blue ones that do it too, but there's not a whole lot of black creatures that do that. Next is Zidane, Cheerful Thief, 5 mana, 3, a red and a white for a 3/3 legendary human mutant scout. Little dude we all love from Final Fantasy IX. When he enters, gain control of target creature and opponent controls until end of turn. Untap it. It gains lifelink and haste until EOT. Whenever an opponent gains control of a permanent you control, create a treasure token. So 5 mana is probably too much. I mean, this is uncommon. It's not rare or mythic or anything like that, but 5 mana might be slightly too much for what this thing is actually doing, but it is a threaten effect that gives the creature lifelink, okay, and when they get their creature back at end of turn, you get a treasure token too. So it's not god-awful. It's really not. And it's a decent blink target in at least one color that does blink somewhat well. So I don't think it's a sideboard card or anything like that, but I do think that if you ever resolve it in a game of Magic, it'll be better than it looks, but I just think you can probably find 75 better cards to play in your standard deck than this, 60 and the sideboard. There's probably better stuff, but altogether, I kind of can't hate this card, but now into some cards that I kind of can hate. That's the intro pack stuff. I don't actually hate any of these, but they are, for the most part, of intro pack power level. But we'll get back to a couple of new cards from today, one of which I think is destined to see some amount of standard play. But let's move through these first, because there are some hype references in here. We got Lightning, best part of FF13. Right? Somebody the other day was like, you don't know how to pronounce Lyces, so you've never played Final Fantasy 13. It's yeah, actually I did play Final Fantasy 13 back in 2011 or something. It's been a really long time, and I guess I blocked out most of it, and I never finished it, but I do know Lightning, and she's really cool. 3 mana, 2 and a red for a 2/3 legendary human soldier with menace. Whenever Lightning deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card for as long as you control Lightning. So a 3 mana, 2/3 menace that sometimes gets you a card off the top. At least it's not until end of turn or until your next turn or something like that. It's just for as long as you control Lightning, which probably won't be for super long, given how removable this card actually is. So I wouldn't play it. Let's move on to Judgment Bolt. 4 mana, 3 and a red for an instant that deals 5 damage to target creature and X damage to that creature's controller. X being the number of equipment you control. So a little better, I think. I mean, still not amazing, but for 4 mana, you get 5 damage to a target in red, which I guess is noteworthy, But you can actually bolt the opponent off of this somewhat easily. Wouldn't be too hard. You play 4 of these in your deck, then you've got like a pretty nifty removal spell that sometimes either shocks your opponent or can even do like 4, like it can do up to a fair amount of damage. So this card I don't necessarily hate, but I do think that 4 mana is too much for this for the most part. But I'm coming around. In an equipments deck, like maybe, But Magitek Scythe is up next. This is just good-looking art. 4 mana for an equipment that equips for 2. It has a test of your reflexes. When this equipment enters, you may attach it to target creature you control. If you do, that creature gains first strike till end of turn and must be blocked this turn if able. Equipped creature gets +2/+1. So there are like some interesting commanders that you could throw this on, especially any commanders that have Death Touch, or maybe you have like a Basilisk Collar, and then suddenly nasty. Just any dude with Death Touch, I'm looking at this in a commander context, but in standard, it's not like all their guys have to block it, but at least one guy has to block it. So that's just still not going to work out great. Like, oh, you have a Death Touch first strike guy. I'm just going to block it with my 1/1, I feel like it's just going to get chump blocked most of the time, but still, for 4 mana, I guess you could do a lot better, but there are definitely certain creatures this goes on like way better than it goes on other creatures, namely Death Touch guys. But we'll move on to Deadly Embrace. 5 mana, 3 and 2 black for a sorcery. Destroy target creature an opponent controls, then draw a card for each creature that died this turn. All right, so 5 mana sorcery, no. I think we can basically all agree no on that, but it's a removal spell that draws a card. Like it basically always draws a card, but it might draw like 2 or 3, you play it like post combat and maybe a couple of your guys died in combat. One of their guys died in combat, plus the dude you killed with this, and you just draw 4, So I could actually see this being like a neat commander removal spell, but only if you can engineer situations where it draws a bunch of cards. Like in Aristocrats, like I sacrifice 3 dudes and then play Deadly Embrace, draw 4. Like that actually seems like an okay play for 5 mana. So I don't see this, being terrible. I can see a lot of people just looking at a 5 mana sorcery, destroy target creature, and just, oh, that's bad. And it is pretty bad. But, in the right deck, in the right situation, then yeah, draw 3 or 4 is actually more than worth the 5 mana cost, So there's things I like about this. There's more than a few things I like about this, mostly because I play Aristocrats and Commander. But next is Beatrix Loyal General, 6 mana, 4 and 2 white for a 4/4 legendary human soldier with vigilance. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may attach any number of equipment you control to target creature you control, including Beatrix, which is kind of neat. But that's actually not horrible. Just free equip cost. And being able to shift like 4 equipments onto one guy with this is not horrible. Like anything that lowers equip costs or just makes them, literally free, totally down with. Especially since the very last card, sort of the best card in my opinion of all these intro pack cards, is an equipment that cost $1 million to equip. So, something like Beatrix could really help out with that. But even in your, Boros equipment stack and Commander, I think she might cost a little bit too much, but that is a pretty powerful line of text. It is. And she's pretty. But next is Xande, Dark Mage, the main villain of FF3. Cool to see him here. 4 mana, 2, a black and a blue for a 3/3 legendary human wizard with Mentis, and he gets Mentis. What am I, Medea now? It's got Menace. Xande gets +1/+1 for each non-creature, non-land card in your graveyard, which is not asking much, just instants, sorceries, artifacts, planeswalkers, enchantments. I mean, there's a lot that can make this a little bit larger. So this could be like a 4 mana 9/9. But my problem with it is that's all it's ever going to be. I honestly should have put this before Beatrix. I think Beatrix is cooler, all things considered. But, 4 mana 10/10 Menace. It could be good. I like the way a lot of these Final Fantasy cards scale. They come into play as like relatively small guys, but they get huge. A lot of them are like that, so it's just another one of those. Next is Seymour Flux. So awesome version of Seymour here from FF10. 5 mana, 4 and a black for a 5/5 legendary spirit avatar. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may pay 1 life. If you do, draw a card and put a +1/+1 counter on Seymour. So Let's go. By the way, I think his name might be Seymour or something, but if I remember FF10 correctly, his name is actually, because that's like one of the few games that you actually got, or one of the first games where you got like dialogue, spoken, voice acted dialogue. And I'm pretty sure his name actually is Seymour. But anyway, this, I love FF10, and for some reason, I'm having a hard time remembering. But one way or the other, a 5 mana 5/5 is a baseline. Like it needs to be at least a 5/5 at that mana cost to be okay in terms of power toughness. But, Sheldred's a 4/5. Well, I guess he only costs 4. She only costs 4. But one way or the other, a 5 mana 5/5, you could be doing worse in terms of stats. But every turn, it's going to get a little bit larger. And it's a Phyrexian arena that like doesn't even have to pop off. Like a Phyrexian arena is going to kill you because you're at 1. It just kills you. This, at least it's a May ability. So I guess I like that. So just like extra copies of Phyrexian arena on a huge dude that becomes like an 8/8 if he stays out for a few turns. Like, yeah, there's a reason that I put this above a lot of the other intro pack stuff. So we're getting into the better stuff now, to say the least. And so we'll look at Rosa, Resolute White Mage, an underrated character from FF4, man. Cecil's girlfriend, fiance. And she's like an archer that's also a healer. And I always thought that was like a cool combination of things. But anyway, this is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 2/3 legendary human noble cleric with reach, because she's an archer. But even if she doesn't have the creature type, she shoots arrows. She's got reach. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains lifelink until end of turn. So not necessarily an Innkeeper's talent or even, a Luminarch Aspirant or something, but it's got very similar text to a Luminarch Aspirant, and the lifelink is actually real burp there. These are videos to me are funnier when I have to do them all in one take, because stuff like that happens. I think it actually adds to the authenticity, but the authenticity, that should be a word if it's not. Anyway, yeah, I think that lifelink actually helps a ton of decks out, especially obviously commander decks that are trying to gain life for whatever reason. Got a bunch of life gain triggers. This will help you get them. And even if you send a creature in and it dies, you gain some life, and then just Rosa gives that +1/+1 to a different guy on the next turn. It's not horrible. I like it. Anyway, that's Rosa. Were that she better? You know what I mean? At least we get Rosa. I like that we got representation for Rosa. Next is another Ultimecia temporal thread here. This is 6 mana, 4 and 2 blue for a 4/4 legendary human warlock. When she enters, I wonder if this will help. Yeah. When she enters, tap all creatures your opponents control. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Okay. Like 6 mana is probably too much for standard. But in Commander, this actually does kind of a few things for a few decks, especially the Hilda deck. She's the 4 mana Azorius legend that whenever you tap a dude down, you get to do one of like 3 incredible things. So this just taps all your opponent's creatures down, which is obviously good for getting attacks in and stuff too. But you also get this, we've seen a bunch of cards like this, reconnaissance mission, whatever. Coastal piracy. Again, we've seen a bunch of cards that effectively do this. Enduring curiosity, blah, blah. And so this is, we know, a really, really good effect. I could see this just kind of slotting into a bunch of blue commander decks, actually. So 6 mana looks like a lot, but I don't think it's that bad. I really don't. Ultima weapon, though, is our final card, if I'm not mistaken, of all the intro pack cards. This is 7 mana for a legendary equipment that equips for 7. Whenever a equipped creature attacks, destroy target creature an opponent controls. Equipped creature gets +7/+7. So again, this is where Beatrix comes in. She seems really good in this situation. But so does, let's say, any of the clouds that we've seen in this set. We've seen a couple of clouds that both effectively say, just attach an equipment to cloud during your turn at whatever point. So, just making sure that you can throw +7/+7 on a creature seems good. Plus, there's a ton of commander cards that just let you suit up a creature. Whether they are creatures or whether they're like instants and sorceries, they just allow you to, throw an equipment on a guy. All of those are going to be really good with Ultima Weapon. +7/+7 is absolutely no joke, but neither is the 7 mana casting cost. So you're going to really want to need this card in your deck before you actually play it. But, I'm not actually too worried about the equip cost because that can be circumvented very easily, But we'll move on to the last few cards from today. They're not part of the intro packs. Starting with Ultima, Origin of Oblivion. This is in the main set, and he has 5 mana for a 4/4 legendary god with flying. Whenever Ultima attacks, put a blight counter on target land. For as long as that land has a blight counter on it, it loses all land types and abilities and has tap, add, colorless. Whenever you tap a land for colorless, add an additional colorless. I guess this works pretty well with wastes and stuff. You ramp into it and you're like, Eldrazi deck? Is this good in Eldrazi decks in Commander? Probably, you know what I mean? You're supposed to blight your own lands, but obviously you can blight your opponent's lands too. And that could be really, really good on a 5 mana 4/4 flyer. It's not necessarily land destruction, but it's an okay body for the mana cost that can really do some damage, But if you blight your own lands, and suddenly it's also a 5 mana 4/4 flyer that ramps you, which could be really good if you're trying to play Ugin or Bahamut or whatever, There's a lot of stuff in Standard this could work with, and obviously we're always looking for stuff for the Oops All Colorless deck, and he definitely goes in, so I'm looking at it. But there's one more Ultima card that we have to look at today, 3 in a row to end the video, and that is just Ultima. This is 5 mana, 3 and 2 white for a sorcery. Destroy all artifacts and creatures in the turn. So I don't know why it has to end the turn, maybe just for flavor reasons, but this could be good in decks that want to do something about Corey Steel Cutter in Standard. But I've been seeing people say that on Twitter all day, and they're instantly met with a tide of well, you're not going to survive until then. Well, yeah, you are. It's I've survived against Corey Steel Cutter until turn 5 a lot, a whole lot, guys. So much. So not only is there that, however, there's other things that I guess you could say temporal lockdown already exiles Cutter and all their creatures and stuff, and even temporal lockdown isn't quite enough, but now you've got lockdown and this if you want it out of your sideboard. This also helps nerf Simulacrum Synthesizer decks and a bunch of other stuff in Standard alone. So this is no Sunfall, but it could see some play after Sunfall leaves the format, and it could see play depending on how many artifacts there are in the format that we want to bust up, even while Sunfall's in Standard. So really solid sweeper here for sure. But that is all of the cards from today, if you can believe it. I keep hearing an echo. I wonder if that's coming through on the recording. I will find out as soon as I hit record and stop the recording, see if I have to record again. But either way, hope you enjoyed it today, guys. I know it wasn't a whole lot of great stuff, but we got some hype references and we got some decent cards. Ultima, that's fine, But there's a few things in there that I really like today. And we got to see Rosa, which I'll always be happy about. But I'm about to record the top 10 Commander cards from this set that you should know about. So you'll get double content today because it wasn't a great day in terms of quality on the Standard side of things. So look forward to that. There's a couple of new Commanders that I'm really into, and character references I'm stoked about. And I kind of even more excited about doing that video than I was doing this one. So, just join us for that one a little bit later on tonight, and I will catch you cats later. But first, I should tell you about, like the video, sub to the sandwich. We're going to do previews live Thursday on twitch.tv/SBMTGdev, so follow over there. And of course, I have a Patreon as well. $1 a month is all it takes to help the channel out tremendously. And I hope you'll consider doing it. But anyway, let me know how you felt about the stuff down there in the comments. If there's anything I sort of missed that actually makes any of these cards super powerful, I want to know about it. So hit me up, y'all. I will catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.